How many times have you bitten your tongue, faked a smile, and put up with what you shouldn't? How many times have you heard, "It's just a joke," while your blood boiled inside? Well, it's time to get serious. You don't have to tolerate certain behaviors from anyone. Yes, you heard that right, from anyone. Disrespect, emotional manipulation, those venomous little jokes disguised as concern. Enough. Philosophical wisdom teaches us you can't control what others do, but you can control how you react. And are you just going to keep enduring? Because, believe me, every small slight, every passive-aggressive comment you let slide, chips away at your dignity, and that, my friend, is not for sale. So, are we going to keep swallowing poison? Or are we going to start setting boundaries? The truth is, there's no other way. And that's why, in today's video, I'm bringing you the 10 situations you should never tolerate from anyone, under any circumstances. Don't miss the last one, because it will leave you speechless. But before we begin, pay close attention to this story. It will help you better understand the wisdom contained within this material. The story of Clara and the wise elder. In a small village by the river, lived a young woman named Clara. Clara was kind, always willing to help others, and for that, she was loved by her community. However, over time, she began to notice that some people took advantage of her kindness. A neighbor constantly asked for favors without thanking her or returning the courtesy. A friend criticized her for every decision she made, undermining her confidence. And at work, her boss made her feel invisible, ignoring her achievements and efforts. One day, after a long day full of dismissals and criticisms, Clara decided to take a walk in the forest. As she walked, she met an old sage living in a small cabin. Clara, exhausted by the emotional burden, shared her worries with the elder. The wise woman listened carefully and told her, "There are behaviors you shouldn't tolerate, no matter how great your kindness. Don't let people use you as a tool of convenience. Respect is something you must demand, not timidly ask for." Clara looked at her curiously, and the sage continued, "Just as a tree needs space to grow, you need your own boundaries. If you allow others to cut your branches or pluck your leaves, you'll eventually run out of strength. You have the power to decide which behaviors to tolerate and which to reject." With these words echoing in her mind, Clara returned to the village. The next day, when her neighbor tried to take advantage of her once more, Clara politely told him she couldn't continue helping him without receiving respect. To her friend, she responded that his criticisms didn't define her. And at work, she began to assert her value and effort. Little by little, Clara felt stronger, more confident, and noticed that her environment began to change for the better. The moral of this story is that while kindness is a virtue, so is self-assertion. We shouldn't tolerate behaviors that diminish or exhaust us. Demanding respect and setting boundaries is a demonstration of self-love and dignity. Before we dive into the first lesson, if you find these videos helpful, I encourage you to subscribe and turn on notifications to stay informed about the latest insights. Let's begin. 1. Disrespect. Your dignity is non-negotiable. There's something that should never, ever be negotiable in life: your inherent dignity. While respect is something we all instinctively demand, almost automatically, it's not always freely given. And that's exactly where problems start. How many times have you bitten your tongue, taken a deep breath, and let a stinging comment slide? Like a mosquito bite on a warm night? Yes, that comment, the one sometimes disguised as a joke or constructive criticism. but which, in reality, is slowly undermining who you are and what you value. Let's talk about disrespect, because it's something we've all faced, whether at work, in personal relationships, or even with family. No one is immune to attitudes that seek to belittle or disregard who you are. The ironic, or perhaps tragic, part is that we often allow it. We let it happen as if it's normal. But the reality is, you shouldn't tolerate it, not one more time. Sometimes, contempt comes with a smile, those subtle, passive-aggressive phrases that seem harmless but burn inside. The typical, "Sure, you can handle that," or "I don't know why you bother trying so hard." These phrases appear trivial but slide like knives under the skin. This is where timeless philosophical wisdom comes in. It teaches that you can't control what others do, but you can control how you react. So the question is, are you really going to stand by and let others decide your worth? Now let's talk about insults disguised as jokes. How many thinly veiled insults are hidden under the label, "It was just a joke," as if that grants a universal pass to hurt others without consequences. And of course, if you get upset, you're the one with no sense of humor, who takes everything too seriously. But the problem isn't you. It's that it's just a joke culture that perpetuates disguised mistreatment. You should be able to set a boundary without feeling guilty. A calm, "Yes, it was a joke, but it's not funny. Can we talk about something else?" And then you gracefully withdraw. That's self-control. That's dignity. Then there's the subtle belittling that comes with the flag of concern. People who criticize you under the guise of doing it for your own good. Right. Because questioning your decisions or making you feel inadequate is a great display of love and care, isn't it? The key here is not to let them make you doubt yourself. At this point, you must remember that your self-esteem isn't up for auction. You don't need anyone's approval to know your worth or to define your choices. So, what can you do? First, learn to identify these behaviors. It's not always easy, because contempt and insults aren't always obvious. Sometimes they're more subtle than a direct slur. Once you recognize it, the next step is to not allow it. You don't have to be aggressive, but be clear. Remember, you can't control what others think or say, but you can control how you let it affect you. Firmness in your boundaries is an act of self-respect. When you respect yourself, you don't need others to do it for you. Don't let anyone tell you what you're worth, especially with insults, criticisms disguised as concern, or hurtful jokes. Stay calm, but also keep your dignity intact. It's not about reacting with anger or resentment. It's about understanding that respect is the foundation of any healthy relationship. And if someone isn't willing to respect your boundaries, they don't deserve to be by your side. In the end, what matters is how you see yourself, and that, my friend, is non-negotiable. As a wise saying goes, self-respect is the beginning of all true respect. 2. Emotional manipulation. Cut the invisible strings. Sometimes it feels like people come with invisible strings and believe they can pull them at will to manipulate your emotions. And there you are, like a ragdoll puppet, allowing them the luxury of deciding when you get angry, when you laugh, and when you're exhausted from dealing with their drama. Some people see themselves as artists of drama, experts in emotional manipulation, capable of making you feel guilty for their mistakes, responsible for their sadness, and complicit in their happiness. But you're not here to play their script or applaud at the end of their show. Let's get specific. Imagine someone always resorting to tears during an argument. Suddenly, you find yourself losing sight of your own points, embracing their sadness as if it were your own. Or consider the person who blames you for never doing enough, even when you've given everything you have and more. Or my personal favorite, someone who blames you for not being able to handle their own problems, as if you're the captain of a drifting ship and not just a passenger. This is what ancient philosophical principles teach us about self-mastery, understanding that the only thing truly under your control is your reaction to what happens. And yes, that includes not letting yourself get swept away by the turbulent river of someone else's emotions. But how do you do that? It sounds great in theory, but practice is where it gets complicated. First, identify behaviors you shouldn't tolerate. For example, if someone makes you feel guilty for having boundaries or expressing your needs, put a stop to it. Boundaries are there to protect you, not to inconvenience others. If someone belittles your achievements or makes you feel your happiness depends on their approval, reevaluate that relationship. Furthermore, if someone makes you believe that love means sacrificing your peace for their emotional stability, run as far as possible. You're not here to be anyone else's superhero, especially if there's never any gratitude in the end. Philosophical wisdom emphasizes understanding the difference between what you can control and what you can't. Emotional manipulation aims to do the opposite, to make you feel responsible for what is clearly not yours. If you learn to identify and differentiate these behaviors, you can make a conscious decision, and that, my friend, is the first step to freeing yourself from those invisible strings. To avoid falling into these traps, remember a few key things. When you feel yourself giving in out of fear of another's emotional reaction, breathe and take a step back. Question that emotion. Is it yours or is it being imposed? Don't be afraid to set your boundaries firmly, even if it causes discomfort. The temporary discomfort of setting a boundary is 1,000 times better than the constant annoyance of living under the shadow of manipulation. Ultimately, remember that you're not an amusement park for others to have fun manipulating your emotions. Emotional manipulation is like a cheap magician trying to distract you with mediocre tricks while you're amazed by the hand hiding the card. You're not here to be anyone's audience or to live life according to a manipulator's script. Philosophical insights teach that the only thing you can control are your own emotions and reactions, and that's precisely what liberates you. So cut those strings, not because you're insensitive or selfish, but because you know your worth. After all, no one should be the protagonist of your life more than you. Let this be clear, my friend. When you stop being someone else's hero, you start becoming the protagonist of your own story. Asterisk 3. Physical or verbal violence. Your boundaries are sacred. Let us be crystal clear from the very beginning. No one has the right to treat you poorly. Does that sound like an obvious concept? Unfortunately for many, it isn't. We've been conditioned to endure the unbearable under the guise of love, friendship, or even worse, education. It's time to say enough is enough. Abusive behaviors, whether physical or verbal, are never something you should tolerate. And if someone tells you otherwise, perhaps you need new friends, or better yet, a change of scenery for yourself. Let's explore this a bit more without sugarcoating it, and with a touch of irony that always helps to digest the INDIGESTIBLE. First, let's start with physical violence. If someone hits you, pushes you, or grabs you with more force than necessary, that is an assault, period. There are no valid justifications like, it was just an outburst, I was so angry, or the absolute worst of all, I love you so much, I couldn't control myself. Look, if your dog jumps with excitement every time you come home, that's understandable, because it's a dog. But if a person justifies their physical violence with love, you need a good lawyer more than a romantic conversation. Then, there's verbal violence, the kind many disguise as sincerity, or that's just how I am. Funny, isn't it? People are always just like that when they're verbally tearing you down, but then in the office or in front of strangers, they can be sweetness personified. The truth is, No one should ever insult you, belittle you, or make you feel less than you are, especially not those who claim to be your loved ones. In this case, respect should be like air, invisible but vital. And the sad part is, unlike air, a lack of respect is easier to notice because it leaves you breathless, feeling stifled. Next is psychological violence, one of the most subtle and treacherous forms. Here, we're talking about emotional manipulation, blackmail, and all those sneaky little games that, while they don't leave a visible bruise, slowly wear you down from the inside. Have you ever finished an argument with someone and been left with the nagging feeling that somehow you ended up being blamed for everything? Welcome to the world of manipulation masters. I assure you, even the most composed philosophical thinkers would struggle to endure such mental entanglement without losing their temper. Here's where it gets complicated. How do you stop this? The first key is self-awareness. If you truly know your worth, not just superficially, it will be easier to identify when someone is crossing a line. The problem is, sometimes we've spent so long allowing certain behaviors that we no longer distinguish between what's normal and what's toxic. This is where you need to pause, reflect, and ask yourself, is this truly what I want to keep tolerating? Another powerful strategy is direct communication. No excuses, no sugarcoating. Saying, I don't like this, or I don't accept this, doesn't make you the villain. It makes you someone with dignity. It's like when someone offers you a drink you despise, you don't force it down out of politeness, do you? The same goes for toxic behaviors. You need to learn to say no with the same naturalness with which you reject a bad coffee. You don't have to put up with behaviors that hurt you from anyone, whether physically, verbally, or psychologically. Life is too short to pick up the pieces of your self-esteem after every interaction. You deserve relationships where respect is the norm, not the exception. Remember that setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's about protecting your well-being. At the end of the day, only those who respect you truly deserve you. And as a wise proverb suggests, he who wounds you under the guise of affection knows nothing of true love. 4. Lies and deceit. Rebuilding trust's broken glass. Have you ever felt trapped in a conversation where you suspect someone is selling you a story worthy of a movie script, but without the happy ending? That moment when someone speaks, and even if the words sound appealing, something deep inside screams that not everything is as it seems. Welcome to the world of constant dishonesty. Lies, deception, and a lack of transparency, that cocktail that destroys trust faster than you can say. Authenticity. And while we love to think everyone acts with the best intentions, the reality is often quite different. Some people make deception their modus operandi, whether out of fear, convenience, or simply the pleasure of manipulation. They prefer to build castles in the air rather than being straightforward. They tell you what you want to hear, adjust the truth to their convenience, and before you know it, you're in the middle of a storm of confusion and mistrust. Think of trust as a glass vase. Every lie, every deception is a small crack in that vase. At first, the fissures might be minimal, and you might not pay them much mind. But slowly, these cracks spread, deepening until one day, the vase shatters into 1,000 pieces. And the worst part is, no matter how much you try to repair, it never truly becomes the same dot. So what do we do? The easy answer would be to tell you to simply walk away from dishonest people, to set boundaries, and not to let them treat you that way. And yes, that sounds good, but it's not always so simple. Sometimes these people are old friends, close family members, or colleagues you're obliged to interact with daily. You can't just cut ties cleanly because human relationships aren't an on-off switch you can control at will. This is where philosophical wisdom can offer a crucial insight. It suggests that you cannot control what others do, but you can control how you react to it. It's not about tolerating toxic behaviors as if they don't affect you. but about learning to see reality as it is and acting accordingly. If someone lies to you and hides the truth, the first step is to recognize it. Don't deceive yourself into thinking that person will change magically. Chronic dishonesty doesn't vanish just because you want to believe otherwise. Once you've accepted the situation, the next step is to establish clear boundaries. Imagine your life as a house, and the doors are the boundaries you choose to set. Don't let just anyone walk in and take whatever they want. If someone is willing to betray your trust, close the door. Maintain the distance you need to protect your mental peace. This isn't about being cruel or vengeful, but about valuing your well-being above the lies of others. And if all else fails, sometimes, no matter how much you try to set limits, dishonest people continue to cross the line. In that case, you have to make more drastic decisions. At the end of the day, human relationships should be based on mutual trust. And if someone has repeatedly destroyed it, it's time to ask yourself if you truly need that person in your life. Because you know what? Life is too short to be surrounded by people who aren't transparent. Sometimes, letting go is the healthiest thing you can do. As a wise philosopher once made clear, truth is a mirror. When it breaks, it reflects nothing. The same, don't waste your time trying to mend what can no longer be whole. Ultimately, living with honesty, with yourself and with others, is what truly allows you to walk through life with peace of mind. 5. Excessive control. Your life, your garden. Have you ever noticed that sometimes people around you seem to have an obsession with managing your life? It's as if they hold the remote control to your decisions, relationships, or even your very freedom. In these moments, it's easy to fall into the trap of letting others become the directors of your life's movie. But let's be honest, you haven't come this far just to be a supporting actor in your own story, have you? There are people with an astonishing ability to insert themselves into your life as if they are experts at directing it better than you. Perhaps they tell you who you should be with, or how you should act in a certain situation. They don't just offer opinions. Subtly, or not so subtly, they try to dominate your decisions. It's for your own good, they say, while mapping out your life according to their own interests. And what role do you play? The one who slowly gives ground. This excessive control is more common than it seems. It can come from an overly concerned friend, a family member who always knows better than you, or even a partner who tries to mold you to their expectations. And if you think about it, it's absurd. You're not here to be a puppet for someone else's insecurities or desires. This is where philosophical thinking has a lot to teach us. It suggests that the only thing we truly control is our mind, our thoughts, and our actions. Everything else is outside our direct influence. In this sense, why would you let someone else invade the only thing that is truly yours? Imagine your life as a garden. You can care for the flowers, water them, prune them. But if you let just anyone come in and tell you where to plant, which flowers to pull out, and which trees to sow, that garden stops being yours. It becomes a collection of someone else's decisions. So what do you do when someone tries to control you? The answer seems simple, but in practice, it can be more complicated. Say no. Not with anger or resentment, but with firmness. No is an effective barrier for those who seek to dominate your independence. You don't have to justify every one of your decisions. Sometimes, it's simply a matter of respecting your own boundaries. A useful strategy can be to adopt an attitude of inner state of undisturbed serenity. Don't let external pressure become internal noise. When someone insists on managing your life, take a deep breath and remember that only you decide how much weight to give those opinions. After all, everyone must tend to their own garden. Truth is, no one should have the power to control your life more than you allow. So the next time someone tries to influence your decisions, think about your garden, what you want to plant, and how you want to care for it. Life is too short to live under someone else's expectations. remember that the only valid direction is the one you decide to take. At the end of the day, you're the one who will have to deal with the consequences of your choices, not others. So why not choose what you truly want instead of what others expect? Engrave this in your mind, my friend. He who tries to control others is usually the one with the least control over their own life. 6. Humiliation. Protecting your inner shield. Has it ever happened to you that you've been made to look ridiculous in front of others? It's that uncomfortable sensation that crawls up your body, as if you wish you could just disappear, while someone actively tries to make you feel small. Whether in public, where everyone watches and perhaps enjoys the spectacle, or in private, where words can be even more hurtful because no one else hears them, being ridiculed or made to feel inferior is a type of behavior you should never tolerate from anyone, even if you sometimes try to justify it. Humiliation, in any of its forms, is simply a cheap way to feel power over another person. The individual who dedicates themselves to pointing out your flaws or highlighting what they perceive as your defects in front of others does so because they likely have something broken inside themselves. However, this doesn't make it any less painful for you, who ends up being the target of their insecurity. But here's the key question: should you truly tolerate this type of behavior? Imagine your dignity as a kind of shield. It's not made of gold or steel, but it's strong enough to protect you from venomous words. Every time someone tries to humiliate you, they launch a poisoned arrow that, in theory, should strike that shield. The problem is that sometimes you lower that shield out of fear, or because you think it's normal to receive those arrows, especially if they come from someone you know. Well, let me tell you something. It's not normal. You don't have to put up with it, not from a close person, not from a boss, not from a friend, not from anyone. If you consider philosophical wisdom, it offers a very clear idea about this type of situation. You cannot control what others do or say, but you can control how you react to it. That is, you cannot prevent someone from trying to humiliate you, but you can decide what value you give to their words and whether you allow them to affect you. Sometimes the best strategy is to do the opposite of what they expect. Don't react. Don't give them the power to make you feel bad. Think of it this way. If a stranger shouts something insulting at you on the street, you'd probably think, "What a strange person," and continue on your way. Why not apply the same indifference to people you know who try to ridicule you? It's not about becoming a stone, but about remembering that humiliation only has the power you grant it. And what do you do if the humiliation comes from someone close to you? Sometimes it's more complicated, of course, because you don't want to create conflict or make things tense. But this is where self-care comes in. You can and should establish boundaries. Sometimes, simply setting a clear limit with a phrase like, "I don't like being spoken to that way," can be enough. If it's not, if the person continues their behavior, perhaps it's time to reconsider whether you truly want someone like that in your life. In any case, the solution is never to stay silent, swallowing humiliation as if it were a bitter drink you must endure. Speaking up, acting, setting boundaries, all of that is part of protecting your inner shield. No one deserves for you to lower it out of fear of the consequences. You don't have to tolerate behaviors that make you feel inferior. Life is too short to surround yourself with people who seek to see you fall. And remember, dignity is non-negotiable. As the philosopher Epictetus powerfully asserted, do not permit the words of others to define the value you give to yourself. 7. Lack of empathy. Beyond the echo chamber, have you ever wondered why you keep putting up with the unbearable? Sometimes, it seems we've developed a strange tolerance for certain behaviors, as if they're just part of the everyday landscape. And for some mysterious reason, or perhaps just out of habit, we allow certain attitudes towards us to go unnoticed. Maybe because we don't want to make a fuss, or worse, because we believe there's no other choice. But there's one thing you need to be clear about. You don't need to be stoic all the time. swallowing your emotions like stones, especially when it comes to behaviors you shouldn't tolerate from anyone. And one of those behaviors is the lack of empathy. Surely it's happened to you. You face a difficult situation. Try to share what you feel, but the person you're talking to looks at you as if you're recounting what you ate yesterday. And you know the worst part? It's not that they don't listen, but that they simply don't care. In those moments, you wonder, don't they understand what I'm going through? The painfully obvious answer is no. A lack of empathy is like that unwanted guest who arrives at a party, greets no one, and eats all the cake without asking. They have no interest in your emotions, your thoughts, much less your well-being. They simply exist there, immobile, contributing nothing. And what's worse, they leave you feeling alone even when you're accompanied. These types of people have the magical ability to turn your problems into mere anecdotes, or worse, into inconveniences for them. If you've ever found yourself explaining your feelings only to get a response like, everyone has problems, or disinterested, it'll pass, then you've met the face of a lack of empathy. Why do you tolerate it? Perhaps because, in some way, you've convinced yourself that you can't ask for more. Or maybe because you've been led to believe that demanding understanding or emotional support is a luxury not everyone can afford. But let me tell you something. It's not a luxury. It's a necessity. If we keep justifying a lack of empathy with excuses like, they don't know how to express themselves, or they must have a lot on their mind, we end up minimizing our own emotional needs. It's like having a plant and never watering it because the sun should be enough. Well, sooner or later, the plant will wither. You cannot live on the emotional leftovers of others. What to do about a lack of empathy? There's no magic formula, but there are some strategies that can help. The first is to learn to set boundaries. It's not about going into full drama mode, but about being clear about what you need and what you're not willing to tolerate. If someone doesn't show genuine interest in what's happening to you, perhaps they don't deserve to be so present in your life. Another option is to find your own support network. Surround yourself with people who truly know how to listen and accompany you. Those who don't need grand speeches to show they care. Seek spaces where you feel valued, not as an obligation, but as a natural desire for others to be there for you. And finally, work on your own emotional well-being. It's not about being immune to others, but about learning to identify when you're not getting what you need and taking action about it. Because in the end, it's not just about surviving, but about living fully. In life, it's not about enduring the unbearable. There are people who simply don't deserve you. If you notice that someone consistently displays a lack of empathy, never has space for your emotions, and is only there when it's convenient for them, it's time to reconsider that relationship. Because ultimately, it's not about how many people you have around you, but how many are truly with you. As Gandhi once said, he who values you listens to you, and he who listens to you cares for you. 8. Destructive criticism. Protecting your inner sanctuary. Let's be real, we've all been there. You're working on something. Maybe it's your job, a personal project, or perhaps you're simply enjoying life and suddenly, wham! Someone pops up with that destructive criticism that leaves you wondering, was that really necessary? It's as if some people were born with a mission to make you feel that everything you do is wrong, without a single ounce of genuine constructiveness in their words. We've all been told things that, rather than helping, simply drag us down. But why should we put up with such behavior? More importantly, why should destructive criticism ever have a place in our lives? Destructive criticism is nothing more than a disguised way to unleash someone else's frustration. It's as if someone slipped on the stairs and decided to throw a rock at you out of sheer spite. Because let's be honest, if that criticism doesn't come with a solution or a useful piece of advice, it serves only one purpose: to tear you down. And this is precisely where you must draw the line. Just as ancient wisdom suggests focusing only on what truly adds positive value to your life, you too should filter out the noise. One of the main mistakes we make is giving more weight to what others say than to what we ourselves know about our own work or effort. Why? Because it seems we live to satisfy everyone but ourselves. We worry so much about what will they say that we end up giving anyone the authority to voice an opinion, even if their criticism is like a pair of broken shoes. It leads nowhere. Now let's not confuse things. Constructive criticism, even if it stings, has a purpose. That well-intentioned feedback is like a mirror. It allows you to see yourself more clearly, correct your mistakes, and grow. But destructive criticism is more like a shattered mirror. It only reflects distorted pieces of who you are. And if you're not careful, you might cut yourself on its sharp edges. It is neither necessary nor fair to tolerate comments that, far from building you up, only seek to see if they can make you fall. This is where profound philosophical principles come into play, teaching us not to waste time on what we cannot control. And while you can't control someone walking up and unleashing their venom in the form of a comment, what you can control is how you respond to it. Is it truly worth paying attention to that person who has nothing better to do than criticize what they don't understand? This is an excellent moment to apply a simple strategy. Listen only to those who are willing to genuinely help you, not to those who want to see you fail. And if you think about it, there are many ways to deal with this. A useful approach is to think of destructive criticism as background noise in a busy coffee shop. You hear it, but you don't pay attention to it because you know it's not relevant to what you're doing. Ultimately, what matters is how you feel about your own effort and how you can improve it, not what others think of you without knowledge or the intention to support you. So, the next time you receive destructive criticism, ask yourself, what does this opinion really contribute? If the answer is nothing, then it doesn't deserve a single second of your attention. Time is too valuable to waste on people who aren't interested in seeing you grow. As my father, rest in peace, used to say, it's not your job to carry the prejudices and frustrations of others, but to build your own path despite them. Remember, philosophical resilience isn't about ignoring all criticism, but about knowing how to distinguish between what helps you become better and what only drags you down. 9. Indifference and neglect. The silent erosion of self. Sometimes you just let it slide. That small discomfort, that comment that leaves you with a strange feeling, that emptiness that creeps in when someone important seemingly ignores you without apparent reason. At first, you don't give it much thought, but over time, you begin to wonder if it should really be this way. To what extent is it normal to ignore what you feel, what you need, what you are? In a world where being strong often seems synonymous with enduring everything, it's easy to fall into the trap of accepting others' indifference or neglect as something mundane. But what if I told you that is anything but normal? Indifference and neglect are subtle yet devastating behaviors. We're not talking about grand betrayals or dramatic gestures, but about what happens in the daily grind. Those small things that seem to not matter but slowly consume you. For example, when you express your feelings and the only thing you receive is a wall of silence. Or when you ask for something you need, be it time, understanding, or support, and you're met with a later that never arrives. Does that sound familiar? Ignoring your emotional, physical, or relational needs is, in short, a form of mistreatment. Because yes, as harsh as it sounds, Allowing someone else to consistently make you feel invisible is a way of letting them disrespect you. Philosophical thought, for instance, often emphasizes the importance of not depending on the actions of others to find your own inner peace. But that doesn't mean you should tolerate just anything. Being resilient and self-possessed isn't the same as being a doormat everyone steps on. It's about learning to discern what deserves your energy and what doesn't, and above all, to whom you should dedicate it. So, what can you do? No, I'm not suggesting you put on an emotional superhero cape and confront everyone who treats you poorly with a prepared speech. You don't need to go to such extremes. But it is crucial that when you notice something isn't right, you allow yourself to set boundaries. Boundaries aren't walls. They're more like road signs. They indicate how far you can go without getting lost. If someone ignores you, minimizes you, or simply doesn't give you the place you deserve, ask yourself, do I really want this in my life? Because sometimes, to avoid conflict, you end up hurting yourself more than you realize. It's like being thirsty and someone offering you an empty glass. You can pretend you're fine for a while, but the thirst won't go away. Ignoring your own needs isn't a display of strength. It's rather a sign that something needs to change. Now, this doesn't mean you should cut ties radically or become a magnet for drama. It's about learning to communicate what you need, to make it clear that your emotional, physical, and relational well-being is non-negotiable. It won't always be easy, because people don't change just because you wish them to. However, every time you defend your space, you strengthen yourself a little more, not to be a harder version of yourself, but a more conscious and empowered one. In conclusion, indifference and neglect are behaviors no one should tolerate. The key lies in knowing how to recognize them and act accordingly. Sometimes the best response isn't to shout louder, but simply to stop listening to those who don't value you. Remember that at the end of the day, your needs are just as valid as anyone else's. It's not about selfishness, but about self-care. Because as Brian Tracy wisely states, what you tolerate today will be what consumes you tomorrow. And that means you cannot allow indifference to steal the place you truly deserve. 10. Jealousy and control. True love sets you free. Have you ever felt guilty for doing things you enjoy, for seeing your friends, or for having interests that don't include that special someone? If this happens to you, you have a problem you shouldn't ignore. We're talking about jealousy, or rather, that extreme possessiveness that some people disguise as love, but which in reality is more toxic than a venomous plant. Because let's be clear, trying to limit your freedom or make you feel guilty for having other relationships or interests is not something you should tolerate from anyone. First, let's talk about freedom. What a beautiful word, isn't it? Everyone wants it, but few are willing to offer it. Some insist on putting chains on others, especially in relationships. They tell you things like, if you really loved me, you wouldn't need anyone else. Or why are you so excited to spend time with others when you have me? And there you are, questioning whether you really shouldn't feel so enthusiastic about that coffee with friends or that afternoon alone with a good book. Spoiler alert, yes, you absolutely should. The problem is that we've been sold a mistaken idea of love. We've been told that when you love, you give everything, every last corner of your being. And while that sounds romantic, the reality is that the only things you should give are respect, support, and trust, because love should not suffocate. It should allow you to grow, to flourish. If someone tries to trap you in their own concept of what a relationship should be, what they are actually doing is imposing limits on you, not loving you. Philosophical minds understood this well. They championed the idea that the only things we can truly control in life are our attitude and our actions. What others think or do is not in our hands. So why let someone else decide for you how you should feel, whom you can see, or what interests you can have? If you can't control what they feel or think, what's the point of changing yourself to please them? It's as if your life were a garden, and your partner, family, or friends were gardeners. A good gardener knows when to water, when to prune, but also when to let the flowers grow on their own. You cannot allow someone to come in with giant shears, cutting your branches or trying to force your roots into a smaller pot. It's your life, your garden, and if they want to share it with you, perfect. But they shouldn't try to redesign it at their whim. So what to do when you realize you're in a relationship with someone who limits you? Well, first, talk. Sometimes people aren't even aware that they're being possessive or jealous. But be careful. If after talking, you still see them trying to make you feel bad for living your life, then it's time to make decisions. Because a relationship, of whatever kind, should not diminish you. If it does, something is wrong. And it's not about becoming selfish or being someone who doesn't consider others. It's about being clear that your freedom is yours, and that whoever truly cares for you will respect that. At the end of the day, loving someone also means giving them space to be, to grow, to flourish in their own garden. Don't tolerate behaviors that limit you, diminish you, or make you feel guilty for being yourself. Love, like freedom, is a space in which we should feel safe to expand, not to be confined. The next time someone tries to clip your wings, remember, true connection is born from respect, not from control. I want you to learn this very well, because it will serve you greatly. True love doesn't need chains to feel secure. Free wings always return by their own will. If you've made it this far, write in the comments, "I won't put up with anyone's nonsense anymore." I'm excited to hear about your successful experiences. I invite you to subscribe, activate notifications, and comment so YouTube recognizes that these videos are useful for people like you. This motivates us to keep creating similar content in the future. I suggest you check out the last 2 videos we recommend. I sincerely appreciate your time and support. We'll see you in our next adventure.